Have you ever stopped to think that life is a daily construction, made of choices, words, and actions that either raise or tear down the pillars of our future? Proverbs 24 leads us through this path of profound reflections, showing that wisdom is not just a concept, but a lifestyle that protects, strengthens, and guides. Here we find warnings against envy, lessons on resilience, alerts against laziness, and revelations about the importance of justice. This chapter reminds us that there is no neutrality in life. Either we are building with wisdom, or we are allowing negligence to open the way to ruin. Each verse functions like a brick, which, when well placed, raises a solid house unshaken by storms. At the same time, each warning acts as an alert not to repeat the mistakes of the foolish and the wicked. The wisdom of Proverbs 24 shows us that life is not conquered by brute force or improvisation, but by prudence, planning, and perseverance. The one who fears the Lord finds direction to overcome battles, while the one who despises discipline is trapped in cycles of failure. The message is clear: wisdom is the foundation that sustains any lasting victory. Another powerful point is how this chapter connects wisdom to responsibility. It is not enough to live justly for ourselves. We must also act in favor of others, save lives when possible, and avoid rejoicing at the fall of those who have erred. A wise life is also a compassionate life, one that understands the value of mercy within justice. Proverbs 24 further reminds us that the future belongs to those who plant today. Laziness may seem comfortable in the moment, but it produces poverty and frustration tomorrow. Diligence, though costly, paves a path of abundance. The contrast is direct. To reap sweet fruits or to face thorns depends on how we treat the soil of the present. This chapter also makes us reflect on character. The righteous are not defined by the absence of falls, but by their ability to rise each time. The wicked, however, stumble into disaster because they have no roots in truth. Life always exposes who we truly are, and it is in the day of adversity that our strength is revealed. Thus, Proverbs 24 is an invitation to maturity. It challenges us to abandon superficiality and live with depth, building a life rooted in wisdom, justice, and diligence. More than a manual, it is a spiritual map pointing to the path of resilience, integrity, and hope. A call to live solid, sweet, and firm lives before God and men. Before we continue, if you enjoy our videos and feel that they have blessed your life, like and comment. Even if it's just an amen, this makes a huge difference for this content to reach more people and impact lives. If you are not yet subscribed, take this opportunity to subscribe, turn on notifications, and share with your loved ones. This way, YouTube will get to know you better and recommend even more videos like this to help you on your faith journey. Help spread this message of faith and hope. Each like, comment, and share strengthens this work, which we do with all our heart to build up your life. Together, we can reach even more hearts. Continuing, many times as we look around, we see people who seem to prosper quickly and easily, even while walking paths of injustice and evil. The human heart, by nature, tends to compare and desire what appears advantageous. However, Proverbs 24 begins with a powerful warning: do not envy the wicked, nor desire to be with them. The seduction of easy success is, in truth, a disguised trap. The wicked may even acquire wealth, power, and influence, but the price they pay is high: the corruption of their soul and inevitable ruin. Envy makes us look only at the surface, forgetting the final destination of those who choose violence and injustice. God invites us to see beyond the now and to discern the eternal outcome of every choice. The text reveals that the mind of the wicked is constantly occupied with destructive thoughts. They find no rest nor seek peace, but plot iniquity and spread contention. The heart of such a person is like a factory of destruction, never tired of producing evil. That is why envy is foolish. Why desire to be in the place of someone whose future is dark? Here we learn that true wisdom consists of discerning not only what seems good, but what is truly good in God's eyes. It is not about avoiding the wicked simply out of fear of consequences, but about understanding that their path is a dead end. What begins as apparent advantage ends in certain disgrace. Envy is dangerous because it distances us from gratitude. When I look at what others have, I may lose the perception of what I already possess. The wise person, however, understands that every portion received comes from the hand of God and carries a specific purpose. Instead of envying, he chooses to learn, grow, and trust in the Lord's perfect timing. Another relevant point is that envy not only corrodes the soul, but also blinds vision. When someone is driven by comparison, they lose the ability to see their own mission. And that is exactly what the enemy wants: to distract, weaken, and divert God's children from their paths of purpose and fulfillment. Therefore, the first premise of Proverbs 24 challenges us to reorient our hearts. Not envying the wicked means valuing the life God has given us, cultivating gratitude, and choosing righteousness, even if the road is longer and more costly. The righteous prefer to sow seeds of integrity, knowing that in due time their harvest will be abundant and eternal. Life is often compared to a house. Some build on sand, others on rock, but Proverbs 24 shows that true building happens when the foundation is wisdom. A solid house is not only made of walls, but of firm principles that sustain every detail. It is through wisdom that a life is built, through understanding that it is established, and through knowledge that it is enriched. This verse teaches us that wisdom is like the invisible architect of our story. Understanding functions as the engineer who defines calculations and measures, and knowledge is the furnishing that brings beauty and functionality to the home. When these elements are missing, any structure becomes fragile in the face of adversity. That is why the text invites us to invest first in what the eyes cannot see. Many worry about appearance, status, and external achievements, but forget the internal foundation. A house may look impressive on the outside, yet crumble from within if the foundation is unstable. So is the life of those who build on arrogance, impulsivity, or pride. But those who seek God's wisdom, even in silence, build something that will remain forever. The treasures mentioned here are not limited to material goods. They represent precious values such as peace, faith, character, and discernment. These treasures make the home livable, welcoming, and safe. It is like an inner garden that offers shade, freshness, and rest to those who enter. True prosperity is measured by what builds the heart and transforms generations. When wisdom directs the building, the home not only resists, but also becomes a beacon for others. People are drawn to an environment where there is love, justice, and balance. Wisdom establishes harmony among the members of the house, preventing strife and confusion from destroying relationships. This principle applies not only to families, but also to organizations and nations. It is interesting to notice that the text does not speak of a moment of wisdom, but of a continuous process. To build, to establish, and to fill are stages that require patience, effort, and perseverance. Each right decision is like a brick placed in the right spot. Little by little, what seemed like an empty lot becomes a strong, beautiful, and inspiring dwelling. Therefore, the true construction of life is not in accumulating fleeting victories, but in building a story with wisdom. This is the call of Proverbs 24, to use the mind, the heart, and faith as tools to raise something that neither time nor storms nor enemies can tear down. And when this house is full, it will reflect the glory of God in every detail. Proverbs 24 shows us that true strength is not only in the body, but in the spirit and mind. The text highlights that the wise person is more powerful than the physically strong man, for their victory comes from discernment and prudence. This breaks the common paradigm that brute force always prevails. Wisdom is an invisible strength, yet with lasting impact. The history of humanity is full of examples of people who did not have great armies but won battles through intelligence and courage. Inner strength is what sustains someone when the body no longer responds. It is the ability to remain calm in chaos, to keep faith in the storm, and to act with clarity when everything seems confusing. This verse teaches us that the mind is the greatest battlefield. Whoever controls thoughts, emotions, and decisions has already won victories before the fight even begins. The wise person becomes a strategist, knowing that each move must be carefully planned. Physical strength may open doors temporarily, but only wisdom keeps them open. Inner strength is also revealed in resilience. While the ordinary person gives up at the first obstacle, the wise rise up again and again until their victory is established. This capacity is not born by chance, but through daily practice of trusting in God, learning from mistakes, and adjusting steps without losing focus. That is true strength. Another aspect is that wisdom multiplies strength. Those who seek counsel, listen to experiences, and observe paths increase their ability to act with precision. Unlike the proud who rely only on themselves, the wise strengthen themselves with the humility to learn from others. This makes them unbeatable, for they unite their own inner strength with collective knowledge. The contrast between the wise and the foolish is clear here. The foolish rely on muscles, weapons, or resources, but all this can be lost. The wise, however, place their trust in eternal principles that neither time nor enemies can steal. Their strength is not measured in numbers, but in convictions, and firm convictions turn defeats into steps toward victory. Thus, Proverbs 24 teaches us that the greatest strength a person can possess is not in the arms, but in the heart, aligned with wisdom. The true hero is not the one who tears down walls with a sword, but the one who conquers inner giants with faith and discernment. This is the strength that withstands time, overcomes crises, and opens the way to eternal victories. Proverbs 24 shows us that victory does not happen by chance, but through planning and wisdom. By wise guidance you can wage your war, and in abundance of counselors there is victory. This teaching reveals that great achievements depend not only on courage or strength, but on well-defined strategy. Life is a battlefield, and to enter it without preparation is to walk toward defeat. The text teaches us that hasty decisions bring irreparable losses. The wise do not act driven by the emotion of the moment, but evaluate risks, calculate possibilities, and discern paths. Just as a general does not take his army to the battlefield without a plan, we too must not face life's challenges without a solid strategy. Another essential point is the value of counsel. Many times, pride makes us believe we know everything, but wisdom recognizes that listening to others can open perspectives we would not see alone. Counsel multiplies angles of vision and increases chances of success. Those who reject instruction limit themselves to their own mistakes. Those who seek advice expand their strength. Planning does not mean lack of faith, but cooperation with it. The wise trust in God, but also organize their steps, preparing the ground for divine favor to manifest. Faith and strategy walk together. Faith gives us courage to act, and strategy shows us how to act. Improvisation may lead to ruin, but planning leads to victory. This premise also teaches us the importance of patience. Not every battle must be fought immediately. Sometimes it is necessary to wait for the right moment, strengthen foundations, and only then advance. The wise do not rush, for they know that a decision taken at the right time has much more power than 10 taken in haste. Another teaching is that strategy applies not only to literal wars, but also to daily challenges. Family conflicts, workplace disputes, financial or spiritual decisions all require planning and counsel. Those who prepare are more capable of overcoming obstacles and transforming adverse situations into opportunities. Therefore, Proverbs 24 reminds us that living strategically is a divine principle. Planning, listening to counsel, and acting wisely are powerful weapons for winning life's battles. Those who anticipate avoid surprises, and those who seek wise direction achieve lasting victories. Thus, each decision ceases to be a risk and becomes a step towards success. Have you noticed how some people seem to keep hitting the same stone without ever striking a spark of light? Such is the fool before wisdom. Proverbs 24 declares that wisdom is too lofty for him. At the gates of the city, the place of decisions and counsel, he cannot even open his mouth. The scene is clear. Where the wise engage in dialogue, the fool remains silent for lack of understanding. This contrast is revealing. Wisdom is not inaccessible in itself, but becomes unattainable for those who despise learning. The fool rejects instruction, refuses counsel, and resists correction. His own posture distances him from the opportunity to grow. He lives trapped in a cycle of repeated mistakes because he is never willing to humble himself to learn. In the biblical context, the city gate was the place where elders judged cases, deliberated on business, and made political decisions. It was the space of practical wisdom applied to daily life. The fool had no place there because his voice carried no weight, his opinion had no relevance, and his lack of discernment made him insignificant in matters of importance. The most tragic part is that the fool does not realize his condition. He considers himself wise in his own eyes, yet his life proves otherwise. By despising counsel, he closes doors to growth. By rejecting correction, he digs his own ruin. His inability to learn isolates him from the community of the wise and prevents him from taking part in decisions that shape the future. This premise warns us of the danger of remaining superficial. Wisdom requires pursuit, effort, and humility. Those unwilling to descend into the valley of discipline will never reach the mount of understanding. The fool prefers shortcuts, but discovers too late that no shortcut leads to lasting destinations. The path of wisdom is narrow, but it is the only one worth walking. The wise, in contrast, understand that every piece of counsel is a brick in the construction of life. They are not ashamed to learn from others, nor feel diminished by admitting ignorance. It is precisely this posture that places them at the gates of the city, the place of honor and influence. The fool is excluded by pride. The wise are exalted by humility. Thus, Proverbs 24 shows us that wisdom is not a matter of natural intelligence, but of the disposition of the heart. The fool cannot attain it because he refuses the path of learning. But those who humble themselves, listen, and put wisdom into practice not only find honor among people, but also approval before God. Imagine someone who spends the day crafting traps, like an artisan of evil, designing schemes and destroying destinies. This is exactly what Proverbs 24 denounces. The one who devises evil will be called a schemer. He may even think his cunning makes him admired, but in truth, his reputation turns into shame and contempt. Wickedness never generates honor, only condemnation. This warning reveals a profound spiritual law. Everything planned in secret will, sooner or later, come to light. The wicked believe their schemes will go unnoticed, but their very character exposes them. Their fruits betray them, their words reveal them, and their behavior condemns them. It is impossible to hide for long a life nourished by evil. The text also shows that wickedness inevitably produces consequences. Those who plot evil spread discord, destroy relationships, and weaken communities. Just as poison infiltrates the body silently, wickedness corrodes society and wounds those around. Yet the wicked forget that they will reap exactly what they have sown. Another important point is that wickedness is useless before God. Humans may deceive others, but they will never deceive the Creator, who searches hearts and knows intentions. The wicked may gain temporary advantages, but their fall is only a matter of time. Condemnation is certain because God is just and does not allow evil to prevail indefinitely. The contrast is striking. While the wicked are known for their schemes, the righteous are remembered for their integrity. This difference is not only moral but practical. Those who sow goodness earn trust, friendship, and respect, building a lasting legacy. The wicked, on the other hand, leave behind a trail of ruin and shame that even their children inherit. Proverbs 24 teaches us here that it is not enough to avoid evil, but also to reject any complicity with it. Many times, wickedness does not act alone. It requires supporters, accomplices, and voices to validate it. The wise, however, never associate with schemes, for they know condemnation is inevitable. Better to lose temporary gains than to stain one's reputation. Therefore, this premise is clear. Wickedness is not a path to honor, but to destruction. To be called a schemer is to carry a label of shame. The world may applaud for a time, but God's condemnation is final. The righteous understand that integrity is far more valuable than any immediate advantage, and therefore always choose truth. Who has never heard the phrase, "It is in difficult days that we discover who we really are"? Proverbs 24 echoes exactly this truth. If you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. It is not in peaceful days that the true measure of our character is revealed, but in moments of crisis. It is when pressure comes that the firmness of the foundation is proven. Adversity works like a test of spiritual resistance. Many appear strong while everything is going well, but collapse at the first storm. Others, seemingly fragile, surprise everyone by standing firm in the chaos. The difference is not in the intensity of the battle, but in the inner strength cultivated before it arrives. The difficult day only exposes what was already within. This verse invites us to reflect on preparation. It is not about waiting for suffering to then seek strength, but about daily developing a life rooted in faith, discipline, and wisdom. Just as an athlete trains before the competition, the wise strengthen their souls before the crisis. Hidden preparation produces public victory. Another important point is that strength here does not refer only to physical might, but to courage, resilience, and faith. When someone faints in adversity, it does not mean a lack of muscles, but a lack of convictions. A wavering heart loses battles that could have been won simply by not believing that God is greater than the giants ahead. Proverbs 24 does not condemn those who feel fear, but those who surrender to it. Fear is human, but giving up reveals spiritual fragility. The wise acknowledge fear, but do not let it dictate their choices. They face adversity as an opportunity for growth, trusting that every trial is also a step toward greater strength. This teaching also warns against superficiality. If someone does not build deep roots, any strong wind will uproot them. However, when faith is well-founded, even temporary falls do not destroy the person. They rise, adjust the path, and move forward. Crisis does not define the end. It only reveals the quality of the preparation. Thus, we learn that failure in the day of adversity is not inevitable, but the result of lack of preparation and conviction. Proverbs 24 calls us to cultivate strength greater than circumstances, rooted in God. In this way, when the day of trouble comes, and it always comes, we will be firm, not because the battle is easy, but because our strength comes from the Lord. Have you ever thought about the weight of ignoring someone in danger when you could do something? Proverbs 24 directly confronts this issue. If we see people being led to death and do nothing, God, who knows every heart, will hold us accountable. Here there is no room for excuses or omissions. Responsibility for human life is a divine command. This verse shows us that it is not enough to simply avoid doing evil. We must actively act against it. Omission in the face of injustice is also sin. Many prefer to close their eyes to the suffering of others, claiming it is not their problem. But biblical wisdom teaches that the life of our neighbor is our responsibility, and that God observes every choice we make. Human life is the most precious treasure because it carries the image of the Creator. Ignoring the pain of someone in danger is to devalue the very God who gave the breath of life. When we fail to act, we are, in practice, agreeing with destruction. Indifference is a silent complicity that weighs heavily in heaven's judgment. This principle reminds us of the parable of the Good Samaritan, in which religious leaders passed by, but a foreigner stopped to help. True wisdom is expressed in practical actions of love and compassion. The righteous do not measure efforts to extend a helping hand because they understand that saving a life is worth more than any ritual or personal interest. Proverbs 24 also reveals that God does not accept shallow excuses. We may say, "I didn't know," but the Lord searches the heart and knows our intentions. He knows when we avoid helping out of fear, selfishness, or convenience. Nothing escapes the eyes of the one who sees all, and he will hold us accountable for every wasted opportunity to save someone. This teaching is not limited to saving lives physically, but also spiritually. How many are walking toward eternal loss and need a word, a piece of counsel, or a prayer? The silence of the righteous may cost someone's eternity. The responsibility to save is not optional. It is part of the calling to be light in the midst of darkness. Therefore, Proverbs 24 calls us to an active posture regarding life. It's not enough to refrain from doing evil. We must do good. The wise understand that every opportunity to help someone is also an opportunity to honor God. Saving lives, whether physical or spiritual, is to sow seeds of eternity that will bear fruit forever. Anyone who has tasted honey knows it leaves a unique sensation of softness and delight in the mouth. This is exactly the metaphor Proverbs 24 uses to describe wisdom. It is sweet like honey, pleasant to the soul, and a source of strength for the future. Just as honey nourishes and strengthens the body, wisdom feeds and renews the spirit, bringing hope that cannot be cut off. This teaching shows us that wisdom is not a burden, but a joy. Many people associate learning with obligation or the pain of discipline, but the Word of God reveals that growing in understanding is like savoring something delightful. Wisdom is sweet because it generates inner peace, directs decisions, and fills life with meaning. Whoever tastes it once will always desire more. The comparison with honey also speaks about sustenance. In biblical times, honey was one of the main natural sources of food and energy. In the same way, wisdom not only brings joy, but also strengthens us to face the challenges along the path. When the righteous fill themselves with it, they find strength to continue even through the hardest battles. Another revealing point is that wisdom guarantees the future. The text affirms, "If you find it, there will be a future, and your hope will not be cut off." Unlike fleeting riches, which can be stolen or destroyed, wisdom remains and opens eternal paths. It is a safe investment, an inheritance that no one can take away, bearing fruit for generations. Moreover, wisdom is a fountain of hope. How many live today submerged in despair because they rely only on circumstances? The one who has wisdom, however, never runs out of perspective, because even in hard times, they know God is guiding their steps. Hope is the certainty that tomorrow can be better when one walks in eternal principles. It is also interesting to note that just as honey can be shared, wisdom must also be passed on. The more a righteous person shares understanding, the more abundant their life becomes. Wisdom does not run out when transmitted. On the contrary, it multiplies. This is one of the secrets Proverbs 24 reveals. Wisdom is sweet because it is generous. Therefore, Proverbs 24 invites us to experience wisdom as if it were the purest honey. It is sweet, strengthening, and full of promises. Whoever finds it discovers that life gains flavor, the future becomes secure, and hope is never frustrated. Wisdom is the true nectar of heaven, given by God to sustain, gladden, and transform the soul. To an outside observer, it may seem that the righteous fall just as often as the wicked. But Proverbs 24 brings a powerful revelation. The righteous fall 7 times and rise again, but the wicked stumble in times of calamity. This shows us that the difference is not in the absence of falls, but in the ability to rise. The righteous may fall, but they never remain down. The resilience of the righteous comes from their connection with God. They do not rely solely on their own strength, but find in the Lord the energy needed to rise. Every fall becomes a lesson, every defeat a seed of victory. While the wicked see failure as the end, the righteous see in it an opportunity for growth and transformation. The number 7 in this text symbolizes completeness. This means that the righteous may face many falls throughout life, yet in all of them, they will find strength to begin again. Their hope is not in favorable circumstances, but in the faithfulness of God. This truth teaches us that falling does not define the destiny of those who walk in integrity. In contrast, the wicked do not have this same resource. When they stumble, they find no support in faith nor in solid principles. Their calamity is definitive because their life was built on sand. The righteous, however, even in ashes, find in God the breath of a new beginning. This is the invisible strength that sustains those who walk in righteousness. This principle also teaches us not to despise falls. Many times, they are God's instruments to shape character, remove pride, and make us stronger. The righteous who fall and rise again testify to the world that grace is greater than failure. Their life becomes a reflection of divine love that restores what once seemed lost. Proverbs 24 also dismantles the idea of unattainable perfection. The righteous is not someone who never fails, but someone who never gives up. This difference is crucial, for it frees the heart from paralyzing guilt and invites it to move forward, trusting that God always offers a new chance. Victory is found in rising, not in never falling. Thus we learn that the true mark of the righteous is perseverance. They rise 7 times, as many times as necessary, because their strength comes from above. The wicked stumble and do not rise, because their foundation is weak. Proverbs 24 shows us that the righteous may be wounded, but never destroyed. Because their life rests in the hands of God, it is natural for the human heart to feel a certain satisfaction when seeing an enemy fall. After all, those who hurt or persecuted us seem to finally be receiving what they deserve. However, Proverbs 24 gives us a surprising warning. Do not rejoice when your enemy falls, and let not your heart be glad when he stumbles. Biblical wisdom shows us that justice belongs to God, not to our desire for revenge. Rejoicing over someone's downfall reveals a lack of compassion and arrogance. It is as if we were saying, I am better than him. That is why I deserve to remain standing. But the truth is that we are all subject to mistakes and falls. The difference between being standing or fallen is often not our strength, but God's grace that sustains us. The text also reveals that malicious joy at another's fall can bring serious spiritual consequences. God, seeing our hardened heart, may remove his hand of judgment from the enemy and confront us for our arrogance. In other words, the righteous must never place themselves in the role of judge. Judgment belongs to the Lord, and when we try to assume it, we put ourselves at risk. This premise teaches us to cultivate mercy even in the face of the defeat of those who wronged us. This does not mean approving evil or ignoring justice, but keeping the heart free from bitterness. Those who celebrate another's ruin become prisoners of hatred, while the wise choose the harder path, to remain emotionally whole in the face of apparent revenge. A wise heart understands that suffering, even of the enemy, is the consequence of human fallenness and distance from God. Instead of delighting in pain, the righteous pray for transformation, for they know that mercy has also reached them. This posture not only honors God, but also protects the soul from becoming bitter and vengeful. This truth is even more powerful when applied to daily life. How many times do we secretly enjoy seeing someone who humiliated us fail? Yet Proverbs 24 calls us to a higher level of character. The true victor is not the one who sees the enemy on the ground, but the one who maintains dignity when they could have rejoiced in revenge. This is the strength that comes from wisdom. Therefore, Proverbs 24 reminds us that the victory of the righteous does not lie in the enemy's fall, but in their ability to remain upright before it. God's justice always prevails, but it is our duty to keep a clean and compassionate heart. The wise do not rejoice in another's ruin, because they know their true joy is in God, not in someone else's defeat. How many times is the human heart tempted to defy every form of authority, believing that rebellion is the same as freedom? Proverbs 24 shows the opposite. My son, fear the Lord and the King, and do not join with those who do otherwise. Wisdom reveals that honoring divine and human authority is a principle of protection, not slavery. Those who rise against it open the way to their own ruin. Fearing the Lord means recognizing that He is the source of all order, justice, and government. It is not a paralyzing fear, but reverence, respect, and obedience. This fear is the foundation of a balanced life, for it keeps the heart aligned with the Creator. And when the fear of God governs, respect for established authorities naturally follows. The text also warns of the danger of associating with rebels. Revolted people never bring stability. Instead, they are like storms ready to destroy everything in their path. Associating with them is like boarding a leaking ship. Sooner or later, the shipwreck is inevitable. Wisdom commands us to distance ourselves from alliances that lead to disorder and ruin. Rebellion against authorities is, at its root, a reflection of rebellion against God. If the heart does not acknowledge divine order, it will not respect human order either. This does not mean blindly agreeing with injustice, but understanding that disobedience motivated by pride and vanity always leads to destruction. The wise discern when to resist with justice and when to submit with humility. Proverbs 24 also reinforces that the downfall of rebels is sudden and devastating. Those who despise order think they are in control, but God's justice is never delayed. Their destiny is marked by unexpected destruction because stability cannot be built on rebellion's foundation. The urge to defy everything and everyone ends in emptiness and pain. This principle also brings balance to practical life. In the home, workplace, and society, recognizing the importance of authority produces peace and prosperity. Where respect is present, harmony thrives. Where constant disrespect rules, confusion takes over. The wise understand that respecting authority does not diminish freedom, but protects life from disastrous consequences. Thus, Proverbs 24 teaches that the fear of the Lord and respect for authorities are pillars of safety. The rebel may seem courageous, but their path is short and their fall inevitable. The righteous, who fear God and act with balance toward authorities, find protection, direction, and stability. This is true freedom, living in order under the will of God. Can you imagine standing before a court and realizing that the verdict does not depend on truth, but on who has more influence? Proverbs 24 denounces exactly this. To show partiality in judgment is sin before God. Partial justice not only destroys trust, but also brings curses upon those who acquit the guilty or condemn the innocent. Truth cannot be sold or manipulated. Biblical wisdom reminds us that justice must be upright, without favoritism. Humans tend to favor friends, relatives, or the powerful, but God does not tolerate such behavior. He is just in all His decisions and expects men, especially judges, to reflect His character. To be impartial is to reveal integrity that pleases the Lord. This principle applies not only to formal courts, but also to daily decisions. How often, at home or at work, do people take sides out of sympathy instead of justice? Such behavior damages relationships, creates divisions, and erodes credibility. Partiality corrupts any environment because it is not based on truth, but on personal preferences. The text shows that society also recognizes this problem. Whoever says to the guilty, "You are innocent," attracts indignation and scorn, while those who rebuke with justice find favor and blessing. This reveals that righteous judgment not only honors God, but also strengthens community. Impartiality creates trust and establishes environments of mutual respect. Another powerful detail is that impartial justice requires courage. Often, the pressure to favor someone powerful is immense, but the wise remain firm. They prefer to displease men rather than displease God. This posture may bring temporary consequences, but generates eternal honor before the Creator. The courage to be just is always rewarded. Partiality also exposes something about the heart. It reveals attachment to power, prestige, or material gain. The righteous, however, understand that integrity is more valuable than any advantage. When we choose truth, even if it is hard, we are building a solid life based on eternal principles. And that solidity cannot be shaken. Therefore, Proverbs 24 teaches us that justice must be pure without favoritism. To judge with partiality is a serious offense before God and a cause of ruin in society. But impartiality is a source of blessing, honor, and trust. The wise always choose the path of truth because they know God's justice is perfect. And it is upon that justice they build their lives. Who has not received a word so precise that it felt like balm at just the right moment? Proverbs 24 compares a fitting response to a kiss on the lips, a gesture of closeness, sincerity, and trust. This verse reveals the transformative power of right words. They not only inform but also touch deeply, creating true connection between hearts. Wisdom teaches us that it is not enough to speak. It is necessary to speak at the right time and in the right way. A truth spoken harshly may wound, but the same truth spoken with love may heal. The wise understand that words are seeds and choose to sow them carefully so that they produce fruits of peace, trust, and joy in those who hear. Right words are like keys that open doors of understanding. They undo misunderstandings, restore relationships, and create harmony. The contrast is clear. While the fool speaks without thinking and multiplies problems, the righteous weigh their words and build bridges. The value is not in the quantity spoken, but in the wisdom of choosing what to say. This comparison to a kiss on the lips also reveals intimacy and trust. Just as a true kiss transmits affection and respect, the right word transmits sincerity and care. It is not any word, but one filled with truth, wisdom, and pure intention. The result is closeness and joy in relationships. Another important aspect is that right words are memorable. Those who receive them keep them in their hearts, knowing they were not said by chance. How many times do we remember phrases that changed our perspective, lifted our faith, or reignited our hope? That is the power of a fitting response, to mark lives in a lasting way. Proverbs 24 shows us that this ability does not come from haste, but from cultivated wisdom. The righteous learn to listen before speaking, to reflect before responding, and thus their words carry weight. They do not waste their voice on empty comments, but use it as an instrument of life. Their words not only please but transform. Therefore, this premise teaches us that wise words are more than communication. They are bridges of joy. To speak at the right time in the right way, with the right intention, is like offering a kiss of peace, trust, and love. This is the mark of the wise, to use the tongue not to wound or divide, but to heal, unite, and bring life. Have you ever seen an abandoned field, full of thorns, broken fences, and bearing no fruit? Proverbs 24 describes exactly this scene to teach about laziness. The text speaks of someone who failed to care for his vineyard, left the land to chance, and as a result, reaped only abandonment. Laziness always leads to ruin, because time does not wait for those who refuse to act. This principle warns us of the importance of diligence. Life like a plantation requires preparation, care, and continuous effort. The sluggard delays work, postpones what should be done today, and when he realizes it, the harvest has already been lost. What should have been abundance becomes scarcity because negligence silently consumes. The scene of the abandoned vineyard is symbolic. Neglecting the field means neglecting the heart, the mind, and responsibilities. Just as weeds take over fertile land, laziness invades the spaces of life that could be flourishing. The result is always the same: wasted opportunities, suffocated dreams, and a compromised future. Proverbs 24 teaches that laziness does not destroy all at once, but little by little. One day of negligence seems harmless, but when it becomes a habit, it opens the door to failure. The enemy takes advantage of the lack of vigilance, and while the sluggard sleeps, he steals productivity, honor, and even dignity. Ruin comes gradually yet surely. The contrast is evident. The diligent prepares the land, plants at the right time, and reaps with joy. The sluggard, however, always finds excuses not to act. It's too cold. It's too hot. I'll do it tomorrow. That tomorrow never comes, and when he awakens, it is already too late. The future is shaped by today's choices, not by accumulated excuses. This teaching is not only about physical work, but about all areas of life. Spiritual laziness hinders growth. Emotional laziness paralyzes relationships, and intellectual laziness blocks learning. The result is the same: a barren life without fruits or purpose. The wise, however, cultivate discipline in every dimension of life. Thus, Proverbs 24 ends with a strong warning. Excessive rest produces poverty, and negligence opens the door to scarcity. There are no shortcuts to harvest. One must plant, water, and care. The sluggard will be ruined because he never sees the time to sow. But the diligent, who works with wisdom and perseverance, will enjoy abundance and honor before both God and men. At the end of Proverbs 24, we see that this chapter is like a mirror, revealing not only who we are, but who we can become. It shows us that life is not about luck or fate, but about conscious decisions guided by wisdom. Each teaching is an invitation to choose integrity, even when the path of the wicked looks more attractive. The great lesson here is that wisdom brings solidity. It is sweet as honey, firm as a rock, and practical as a battle plan. The fool despises it and reaps shame, but the righteous embrace it and find a future full of hope. A wise life is not one without falls, but one where rising, starting over, and persevering in faith are constant. Another crucial point is responsibility toward others. God calls us not only to care for ourselves, but to act in defense of life, justice, and truth. Omission in this sense is as dangerous as evil itself. To be wise is to be an agent of transformation, someone who does not close their eyes to suffering, but rises to extend a hand. Impartial justice, highlighted in the chapter, reminds us that God hates favoritism. He is the perfect judge and expects his children to reflect his character. To be just is to have the courage to speak truth even when it costs dearly. Such an attitude attracts blessing, trust, and respect because it produces fruits that remain. The conclusion of Proverbs 24 also alerts us to the danger of laziness. The neglected field, full of thorns, symbolizes lives that chose inertia instead of diligence. It is a painful image of what happens when we fail to cultivate our talents, relationships, and responsibilities. The wise learn that constant effort is the key to prosperity. Finally, the chapter calls us to keep our hearts clean, not rejoicing in an enemy's fall, nor allowing envy to consume us. The righteous need no revenge because their trust is in the Lord who judges with equity. Their joy is not in another's defeat, but in the certainty that God is just and that their own life is being built upon eternal foundations. Thus, Proverbs 24 leaves us a legacy. To live wisely, justly, and diligently is the path to a full and abundant life. Those who choose wisdom find future hope and stability that cannot be destroyed. It's a call to abandon superficiality and embrace depth, building each day like one who erects a firm house before God.